Welcome to our noon edition of Arirang News. Here are the stories making the headlines at this hour. President Yoon says he wants to sit down for talks with junior doctors who have not returned to their posts in protest of the government's medical reform plans. But doctors have not shown any interest in taking Yoon up on his offer. After supposedly successfully firing a new intermediate-range ballistic missile with a hypersonic warhead, Pyongyang says that all of its missiles are now solid fuel and nuclear capable. The presidents of the U.S. and China have agreed to have phone talks, agreeing to maintain open communication. Joe Biden stressed Washington's aim of pursuing complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula and security in the Taiwan Strait, but Xi Jinping had a different stance on the latter issue. Amid prolonged disruptions caused by the medical reform in South Korea, President Yoon says he's willing to sit down and have a conversation with trainee doctors who have walked out of their posts in protest to hear what they have to say. Doctors have yet to respond to the president's request, but there's no significant progress happening so far. Choi Soo-young has the latest.
South Korea's presidential office said Tuesday that President Yoon wishes to meet with the junior doctors directly to engage in constructive dialogue, adding that the office is always open to the Korean citizens. The health ministry echoed those sentiments, calling on doctors to engage in talks and suggest reasonable measures for cooperation.
If you stop collective actions and propose unified, rational solutions within the medical community based on science and logic, the government is open to discussions. Please deliver your messages with rational measures prioritizing patient safety.
Following Yoon's proposal on Tuesday, the Medical Professors Association of Korea said that the president is the only one who can make a breakthrough in the conflict. The MPAK also asked the president to meet with junior doctors unconditionally. However, despite continued appeals from the government, doctors have yet to respond. So far, there have been no reports of trainee doctors returning to their hospitals, and only 10% of the interns newly accepted this year had registered by Tuesday, the deadline for the new employment registration. Meanwhile, the government will extend its emergency medical system for 1 more month to fill the gap in medical services created by the mass walkout by trainee doctors and medical professors at general hospitals who are working reduced hours for a third day. An additional 190 billion Korean, around $107 million will be spent on health insurance financing that is supporting the system. The government has also decided to provide an additional 150% in funding to hospitals running critical care and emergency room services. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
Earlier this morning, North Korea said that it has successfully tested a new type of solid-fuel intermediate-range ballistic missile carrying a hypersonic warhead. This comes a day after South Korean military said it detected a ballistic missile fired toward the East Sea. Peunji reports.
North Korea has claimed that on Tuesday it successfully test-fired a new type of solid-fuel hypersonic missile. The regime's state-run media said Wednesday that its leader Kim Jong-un, who oversaw the first test launch of the Hwasong-16 intermediate-range missile the day before, said the regime has now turned all of its missiles into solid fuel, nuclear-capable, and with warhead control. The North said Tuesday's test was aimed at verifying the reliability of the weapon system and that it traveled around 1,000 kilometers. This comes a day after the South Korean military said it detected a ballistic missile fired from Pyongyang and that it traveled about 600 kilometers before falling into the East Sea. North Korea vowed to develop hypersonic missiles at the start of 2021 and conducted a first test of the missile in September the same year. Developing hypersonic weapons was one of the regime's 5 main tasks under a 5-year military plan announced at the start of 2021, alongside creating solid-fuel ICBMs and a nuclear submarine. Hypersonic missiles travel at 5 times the speed of sound, which is more than 6,000 kilometers per hour, so their speed and unpredictable flight paths make them difficult to track and intercept. Last month, the regime claimed the success of a ground test of a solid-fuel engine for a new type of intermediate-range hypersonic missile. Intermediate-range missiles are capable of targeting places like Okinawa in Japan, 1,400 kilometers away from Pyongyang, or Guam, which is 3,500 kilometers away. And solid-fuel missiles can be launched quickly with little preparation, compared to liquid fuel ones.
Since North Korea pledged to develop hypersonic missiles in 2021, it has gone through a lot of trial and error. For the first time, North Korea has tested a specific form of hypersonic missile that it's been aiming for. It will likely test fire the missile 2 to 3 more times.
Experts say the North is likely to start developing hypersonic ICBMs, which are longer-range missiles that are aimed at targeting the U.S. mainland. 배은지, Arirang News.
In the meantime, South Korea has imposed another round of sanctions against the North, targeting Russian vessels that are allegedly involved in the illicit weapons transfers to North Korea. Also targeted were 2 Russians and their companies for helping the regime send IT workers to Russia. Kim Dami with the details.
South Korea has newly added 2 Russian vessels to its sanctions list for their involvement in arms transfers by North Korea. Announcing this on Tuesday, the foreign ministry stressed that the government and the international community have continuously urged North Korea and Russia to halt such military cooperation. The Russian vessels, the Lady R and the Angara, were placed under sanctions for shipping a large number of containers filled with military supplies between Pyongyang and Moscow.
South Korea has announced sanctions as military cooperation between Russia and North Korea, including arms transfers, is a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions. And these actions can be a serious threat to the Korean Peninsula, as well as global peace and security.
Tuesday's sanctions also included 2 Russian companies and the heads of both, accused of helping North Korea earn foreign currency by illegally sending its information technology workers overseas. The Russian firm Intellect LLC was put on the list for providing documents of identification needed for North Korean workers in Russia. The other company, Sojestvie, was sanctioned for illegally helping North Korean workers enter Russia and to stay there. Meanwhile, the U.S. also assessed Monday that Pyongyang continues to provide military support to Moscow amid the prolonged war in Ukraine. When asked if North Korea was still supplying Russia with weapons during a press briefing, Pentagon Deputy Spokesperson Sabrina Singh said the partnership between the 2 sides continues to flourish. She added that while Washington has released declassified information on North Korea-Russia military cooperation before, it will not reveal details of recent shipments. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
Seoul's top envoy to Washington criticized Russia for its recent veto of a resolution to extend the mandate of a UN panel monitoring the enforcement of North Korean sanctions. Speaking at a press meeting on Tuesday, Ambassador Cho Yeon-dong expressed deep regret over the Russian veto in a UN Security Council vote last Thursday, emphasizing that the move tarnishes international trust in the Council. Cho further stressed that Russia's veto is an example of the close cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow, adding that the move will have a negative impact not only on security on the Korean Peninsula, but also on the UN and the international non-proliferation regime. The panel is set to expire on April 30th. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have talked on the phone for the first time since their summit last November. Biden underlined Washington's enduring commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Lee Seung-jae has more.
Amid growing concerns over North Korea's continued missile and nuclear threats, U.S. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping held phone talks on Tuesday. According to the White House, Biden stressed Washington's enduring commitment to the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, adding that the talks between the 2 leaders were candid and constructive. The White House also said that Biden reiterated the U.S. stance of engaging in diplomacy with North Korea while taking further steps to deter further provocations by the regime. Tuesday's talks also came amid worries that Russia's veto of a UNSC resolution to extend the mandate of the expert panel overseeing the implementation of North Korean sanctions will lead to a potential erosion of the sanctions regime. The 2 leaders also discussed the ongoing issues regarding trade. Biden said the U.S. will prevent its advanced technology from being used to undermine America's national security, adding it will continue to limit China's access to key technology, such as advanced semiconductors, as part of its de-risking policy. The U.S. leader also raised issues over what the U.S. says is China's unfair trade policies and non-market economic practices. The Oval Office said that the two leaders also reviewed and encouraged progress from their summit in San Francisco earlier this year, including anti-drug cooperation, ongoing military-to-military communication, talks to address AI-related risks, and continuing efforts on climate change. Biden and Xi welcomed ongoing efforts to maintain open channels of communication as U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Secretary of State Antony Blinken are set to visit China within the next few days. This will also be followed by talks between the defense chiefs of the two countries, as well as a visit by high-ranking Chinese officials to the U.S. in the near future. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
South Korean politicians headed to Jeju Island on Wednesday to commemorate the 76th anniversary of the April 3rd incident, when some 25,000 to 30,000 civilians were killed by the police and other pro-government forces. The ruling People Power Party floor leader Yoon Jae-ok and the main opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung both attended the commemoration ceremony held at the Jeju April 3rd Peace Park, along with the leaders of their respective satellite parties and other minor parties. This comes just a week before the 22nd general election of South Korea. The Yoon Suk-yeol administration has pledged over $700 million for new research and development projects to ramp up innovation in the country. President Yoon's senior secretary for science, Park Sang-wook, told reporters Wednesday that the government is preparing to release the largest R&D budget plan yet to turn the nation into a first mover in advanced fields such as artificial intelligence, biotech, and quantum technology. Park said in 2025, the government will spend 1 trillion won or $740 million on innovative R&D, considered leading or novel in their respective fields. The figure is set to increase to 5% of the government's R&D budget by 2027. The government also plans to introduce a stipend program for scientists and improve approval and evaluation procedures, as well as continue to remove regulatory hurdles. South Korean companies Samsung E&A and GS have won a $7.2 billion deal to expand a gas plant in Saudi Arabia. The top office on Wednesday said it is the biggest contract won in Saudi Arabia by South Korean firms, and a third one in the Middle East, adding that it's a result of President Yoon Suk-yeol's summit diplomacy with Saudi's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The two leaders have exchanged visits, with President Yoon making a state visit to Riyadh last October, where an agreement was made to strengthen cooperation in infrastructure. According to Aramco, Saudi's state petroleum company, the project will increase the Fadhili gas plant's processing capacity from 2.5 to up to 4 billion standard cubic feet per day, raising production capacity by more than 60% by 2030 compared to the year 2021. South Korea's foreign reserves have risen to a 3-month high. Data released by the Bank of Korea on Wednesday shows that country's foreign exchange reserves, a barometer of its financial stability, came to over $419 billion at the end of March, up $3.5 billion from the previous month. An official from the central bank said that gains from foreign currency deposits and investments offset the rise in the dollar index. And as of the end of February, South Korea is the world's 9th largest holder of foreign reserves. In other news, these days workplaces are undergoing changes as some call the trend Office Big Bang Era. Jumping on this trend, Korea's Jeju Island recently introduced a new type of office culture. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports on what that is.
It's a typical workday on Jeju Island. Inside the 7-story building in Jeju City, Kim Sung-wook is busy at work. Kim works for the Jeju provincial government, but today, instead of heading to the government complex, he's here at a second office. So this is a Sotong Center or Communication Center in Jeju City. So here, people can read books and try out a wide range of cultural activities like carpentry and cooking, but for some, this is another office. Kim is among the more than 60 participants in the Jeju Special Self-Governing Province's Another Office project. In March, Jeju became the first local government in Korea to launch this initiative.
The office environment has a profound impact on human behavior, cognition, and psychology. Yet, the public sector tends to be rigid, making it challenging to foster cognitive flexibility and creativity. so we started exploring alternative office spaces outside.
Currently, there are 13 of these offices across the island, 8 in Jeju City and 5 in Seogwipo City. About 800 level 6 or below Jeju government employees are eligible to apply. They just have to select a date and location and sign up a week before. For them, it's an opportunity to enhance their work efficiency, which is why Kim Sung-wook has already used the program 3 times.
Tasks like documenting last year's work require my full attention. In the office, I sometimes spend the whole day on something that could be done in 1 or 2 hours. Especially when my boss calls, I help out colleagues or receive multiple phone calls. So I saw another office as the perfect solution for staying focused. Communicating with my colleagues is not a problem as I can do so via phone, video calls, and online messaging.
For the government, there is no financial burden as all of these offices are public or government-owned buildings. While Jeju is the only region that has adopted this system so far, this reflects a growing trend in Korea's workplace culture.
After COVID, many companies have adopted remote working or working outside traditional office settings. Local governments, particularly outside the major cities, see this trend as a way to attract talent and boost their economies.
Throughout the year, Jeju plans to open up more workspaces and expand participation so that more people can have their own another office. 송유진, Arirang News, Jeju.
A strong earthquake with a magnitude of 7.4 hit Taiwan's eastern coast on Wednesday morning, causing tsunami warnings to be issued across the islands of southern Japan and the Philippines. The European Mediterranean Seismological Center reported that the epicenter was located around 7 kilometers south of the city of Hualien, where it's estimated that 350,000 people live. It is the biggest quake to strike the country in 25 years, and Taiwan television showed footage of collapsed buildings with several people said to be trapped as a result. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued warnings stating that tsunami waves of up to 3 meters high are expected to hit its southwestern coast. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has responded to an Israel Defense Forces airstrike that killed 7 aid workers in Gaza, calling it devastating. Amid widespread condemnation from the international community, the Israeli Prime Minister called the attack a mistake. Yoon reports.
On Tuesday, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called an Israel Defense Forces attack that killed 7 aid workers the day before unconscionable and devastating, while world leaders have also asked Israel to explain its action.
The devastating Israeli airstrikes that killed World Central Kitchen personnel yesterday bring the number of aid workers killed in this conflict to 196, including more than 175 members of our own UN staff. This is unconscionable, but it is an inevitable result of the way the war is being conducted.
The World Central Kitchen confirmed on Tuesday that 7 of its team members traveling in a deconflicted zone in Gaza were killed. They were in 2 armored vehicles with the WCK logo visible and an additional vehicle. The strike killed a Palestinian man, as well as citizens of Australia, Britain, and Poland, and a dual citizen of the United States and Canada. The aid charity WCK immediately suspended operations at 68 community kitchens where food was being distributed in Gaza. Guterres also said the attack was yet more evidence of the need for a ceasefire.
It demonstrates yet again the urgent need for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the expansion of humanitarian aid into Gaza, as the Security Council demanded in its resolution last week. The resolution must be implemented without delay.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the airstrike a mistake, while the Israeli military pledged to conduct an investigation into the incident. Some of Israel's closest allies, including the United States, condemned the attack, with U.S. President Joe Biden saying that it demonstrated that Israel was not doing enough to protect civilians. Yoon, Arirang News.
A country 18,000 kilometers and a 20-hour flight away from South Korea, Argentina, has its own kimchi day. One former senator's love for kimchi was all it took for this to happen, and she recently visited South Korea to be a global ambassador. Our Kim Bo-kyung went to see her.
Kimchi is an integral part of Koreans' everyday lives, a food that represents national identity. South Korea in 2020 declared November 22nd as Kimchi Day to raise awareness globally about this Korean staple. Ever since then, cities and regions in other countries have declared their own Kimchi Day. But in 2023, Argentina became the first to do so at a national level. This was possible thanks to kimchi lover and former Senator Magdalena Soler Quintana, who led a bill being passed in her country's Senate and House. During her recent visit to South Korea to become a global ambassador promoting kimchi, she cited its health benefits as one of the reasons for its increasing popularity.
People in Argentina enjoy beef, so fat intake is very high, so kimchi is a great match. Argentinian people are very interested in health along with the effectiveness of probiotics. This has naturally led to kimchi's popularity.
The bill was introduced in the Senate in July 2021, and it took almost 2 years for it to pass the lower house. Magdalena personally persuaded other lawmakers, and she says her will to show respect to the first-generation Korean immigrant community in Argentina was her motivation.
When they settled in Argentina, they tried eating Korean food fused with Argentina's. It is our way to show gratitude towards the Korean immigrant society that's been living here for 60 years.
When asked about ways to make kimchi be recognized more, she suggested Korea should look at kimchi in a different way and to actively use Korean roots based in other countries.
It's not common to have a dish that everybody, regardless of social class, enjoys. The Korean immigrant community is very well formed in every corner of America. If Korea uses an asset like this along with social media, kimchi could be recognized more.
Hoping that Kimchi Day becomes the foundation for boosting bilateral ties, she vows to make kimchi more well-known in Argentina. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Spring rain soaks most of Korea today. Mountainous regions on Jeju could see up to 60 millimeters of heavy showers, with a heavy rain advisory being issued there. But the capital area will see spotty rain through mid-afternoon. Rain clouds will let up from the northern parts of the country, so those in Jeju and Jeollanam-do should brace for on and off heavy rain through tonight. Rain brings down the highs in certain parts of Korea. Temperatures could go down nearly 10 degrees lower in some of the southern regions, and that's including over in Daegu. Meanwhile, Gwangju gets up to 17 degrees, Seoul topping out at 20 degrees, with a dry weather advisory in place in the capital. But today's rain should help to ease the dryness in the air. Fine spring weather returns tomorrow with brighter skies, and temperatures should stay above normal for the next 5 days, getting close to peak cherry blossom season in the capital area. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for you at this hour. We'll bring you more updates tomorrow.